Welcome to the Make Me Whole podcast. I'm your host, Josette Rosado, and it's time to talk getting past what's difficult, trusting our own abilities to do more, and keeping it that way. So I definitely wanted to start today's episode with a little bit of a disclaimer. If you're finding that the topic of family toxicity, and ending relationships is a hard one for you, and you're not exactly sure how to manage it, please reach out to someone who's willing to talk to you about it, be it a church pastor, a therapist, a trusted friend, because it is something that has become more of an issue as of late, as people are coming to realize their own truths and what it is that they feel they're comfortable with. I don't know how many times I've heard the phrase, blood is thicker than water, or you can't choose your family. So in my own experience, I've found that people will say those things to try to make something right or justified when we are dealing with mistreatment of our family members. A lot of times, the idea of being a good family member might mean that you put up with a lot of crap. Some that you wouldn't even tolerate from people on the street, friends that you know, coworkers. But because you are a family member, it doesn't mean that you have to keep the relationship going no matter what. Sometimes cutting that tie with your family is the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. Here's some facts. In 2015, a study was done, and it found that 80% of people who broke off their relationships with their family thought that that change had a really positive effect on their lives. They reported feeling freer, more independent, and stronger. On the flip side, cutting ties with families is not even always easy, and it has some negative consequences. You might experience reduced levels of feeling happy. You might feel some loss and worry about how you're going to be perceived by those around you, be it family, friends, or other family members. The idea here is to really be prepared for those challenges you might face after you decided that cutting your ties with your family is what you need to do. Okay, so this happens more often than you actually think. It's not just talked about, that's the problem. For some people, they're embarrassed. Others, they feel like, oh God, I sound so mean, so cruel, I'm the jerk. And sometimes people just don't want to talk about it because it's a family issue and it's private. Usually it happens with extended family, but also immediate family members. In that same study, it was found that 10% of mothers are currently estranged from at least one adult child. There are some people that only think about cutting ties. They say those prayers like, oh my gosh, if I just disappeared and nobody knew where I was, I would just be so much happier. You know, you make those threats like, if you keep arguing with me this way, you keep treating me this way, I'm just going to leave and you're never going to see me again. But a lot of times, even though they might discontinue contact for a little bit, actually cutting people off completely might be too hard to do. Some people deal with toxic relationships with their family because they think they're supposed to. They're supposed to stay in contact with one another. And a lot of times they hope that there'll be a change. They're afraid that if they leave, they'll never be able to see that change, and hope that the love and support that they believe they should receive from their family members will shine through. It doesn't matter the reason. Staying in any kind of toxic relationship can have really serious consequences, especially on your mind and your spirit. So I'm focusing on how toxic relationships take a toll on your mental health. I mean, sometimes our self-esteem plummets. Sometimes with anxiety, it starts to rise when you're trying to keep yourself in the good graces of the family around you. The stress of these unhealthy relationships can increase depression, anxiety, unhappiness, lack of self worth, and lack of connectedness to that family. It can also affect your physical health. Another study found that being in a negative relationship usually will put people at a higher risk for cardiac problems, even heart attacks. And people in really bad relationships have also been linked to having a reduced pain tolerance and slower wound healing times. But even if you're not having physical or mental health problems, negative relationships really are stressful. It takes a lot of energy and time when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and then you feel exhausted much more of the time. All that time and energy that you're putting into fighting and keeping up with and maintaining in this unhealthy environment and relationship is actually taking away from the things that you need to get done for yourself, how you boost your own self esteem, and how you create healthier relationships with the people around you. I do want to say, these things don't happen over one isolated incident. This actually happens from years and years of mistreatment. Sometimes it's a little at a time. Sometimes it's something that has become the final straw and there's no going back. You might think this is what's best for you. You might think letting go of those people who are hurting you, even if they are family, is actually going to reduce the stress you feel every day. You might even think that cutting off the ties might be better for the other person. They having an ongoing relationship with you isn't helping them. And maybe it's just time to part ways. The common reasons that people oftentimes cut ties with their family include things like physical or emotional neglect, poor parenting, instances of betrayal, drug abuse, disagreements, and physical or mental health problems. They're not the only reasons why. You might have values that are different from somebody else, or you're just tired of dealing with somebody's bullshit and you just decide, I'm not going to do this anymore. How does this affect us though? People who are estranged from their family, they talk about how it has negatively impacted their relationship with their friends and other family members. And they're likely to experience this stigma of being that person. And it's all associated with their decision to leave. Parents who are estranged from their adult children usually feel ashamed and not normal. They experience a huge level of loss, and they often feel like they've lost their own role in the family. Any adult who has cut ties with their family will tell you that they often feel anger or shock, definitely sadness and frustration. They might cry a lot for the beginning of it or throughout it, and they definitely experience a significant loss of emotional and practical support. Not to mention the pressure that comes as being an adult and being told that you have to fix the relationship. You're told you got to forgive and forget, or they're your parents. You have to give them some slack. You have to give them some grace. You need to fix this. Sometimes adult children don't even tell anybody what they're going through because they feel they're going to be misunderstood or judged. And a lot of times when this happens, they feel completely unsupported. I don't think there's enough research on the people who are not exactly directly related to the issue. So if you have an adult parent and an adult child, dealing with a separation or an estrangement, everyone around them is collateral damage. And what is clear is that they are susceptible to experiencing the same kind of feelings and all the complications, how to keep the family as a family and how to move forward with this new sense of relationships. It can make family gatherings pretty complicated. Like, can you go to that wedding knowing that that person that you don't talk to anymore is going to be there? Should you refuse an invitation that you were given because somebody else will show up that you don't want to talk to? Or do you ask? That's a bold one. Do you ask that that person not be invited? Or can you attend a function without making it a big deal? Just ignore the person, or maybe, engage in a little light talk that's a little superficial. There isn't a right or wrong way to go about dealing with this. But, of course, you need to make a decision that's best for you. I know we put too much emphasis on what we're going to say to people, too. How much are you going to share with them? What's going to be your reason for ending the relationship? Should you tell other family members that you cut this family member off? What about other people who aren't familiar with your family? Well, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but it is important that you consider how other people around you are going to respond. Not everybody is going to get it, and that's okay. At this point, if you have people or family members that keep trying to pressure you to stay in contact because, family is first and they always stick together, it might not be helpful to talk to them. You might decide to just kind of let them know what your reasons were and that you're just going to protect your peace and your health at this time. Now, of course, I want to go into the idea that even though you decide to cut a family member off, it doesn't necessarily have to be permanently. You might not want to talk to somebody now, but then you might decide that you would like to at a later time. You might miss that person and want them to be part of your life. Maybe something changed. Maybe they finally got the help they needed, or you think you might be able to gain a healthy relationship again. Maybe you just want to try after some time pass. I mean, if you're willing to put your differences aside or simply want to start a conversation, what's wrong with that? Sometimes reconciliation can happen. But I go back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. If you're thinking about cutting ties, you've already ended the relationship, you're thinking of fixing things, you might want help professionally. Talking to someone who is a counselor might help you sort through all of the emotions that you're going through. Therapists can help with problem solving skills and talk to you about how to handle those family gatherings or how to explain the situation to other people. Look, I know that it isn't an easy decision to make when you are considering the people around you, how they treat you, what kind of relationships you're going to grow in, whether they lift you up or knock you down. It's an individual choice and it's yours to make. While we're trying to focus on our well being and our peace, we have to consider that the people we keep around us, including family members, need to be supporters of that peace, supporters of our growth, and help us maintain those healthy relationships with ourselves in the hopes of moving forward. I know how hard this is. It's something that I have experienced firsthand. And despite how difficult decisions like this can be, I know that you can come out of it okay. You can find that tribe that is there to support you and you give support to. You can come ahead of this. So don't be afraid. Remember that you can always rely on you. And once you're confident in that, there won't be anyone who can get in your way. All right, well, there we go. Another one in the books. That one was a little tough, but I'm glad to be sharing my knowledge and hopefully helping those who need the help. I want you to reach out. So find me on Facebook and Instagram at Bosses of Bliss, on TikTok at Blissful Boss, or send us an email at makemewhole@bossesofbliss.com. Remember, complain less and do more. See you on the next one.